And welcome to our September edition of Sports Highlights on the Road. Greg Picaderas, glad you're with us. Our program airs on Mondays at 7, 2, and 7, weekends at 9 a.m. For more, log on to NNPSTV.com and go to YouTube as well. We're at Newport News Park, beautifully known for celebration and lights, walking trails, picnics, activities, bike riding, the water, and we're here with Nick Vredos. Good to see you.
Thank you, Greg.
Nick, obviously we're talking about bicycling. How did you get involved in bicycling?
Well, I had a friend that said to me one day, I was a runner, and he said, well, why don't you come with me riding sometime? And I said, well, that would be nice. And he took me around, and I thought, this is nice. I'm getting to see things, get some exercise at the same time. And so I've become a biker a bicyclist ever since then. And it's been a number of years, probably 18 years or so now.
Yeah, and one thing about it is whether you're walking or bicycling or swimming or running, it's great exercise.
It's excellent exercise. It's low impact. Okay, so running pounds and swimming is also good, but bicycling you can go someplace. You can enjoy this if you look around here. You can enjoy things like this, and so it's an excellent way to get exercise and to visit nature.
And you can also free your mind and body as well, because during the course of the day you're working, people are juggling a lot of activities, but bicycling you're really just free. Indeed,
and oftentimes when I bicycle, my mind floats. But one thing I do as a caution to everybody is I never listen to music. It's too distracting, and so if there's cars around or something like that, you want to be very attentive to your surroundings, and you can do that. You let your mind float, but you know what's around you better. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because the less distractions the better, and bicycle safety is very important whether you're in a residential neighborhood or a public highway.
Well, that's true. And I think for bicycle safety, and I'm speaking to the casual rider, the recreational rider, the guy that wants to get out and get some exercise, because the big guys already know this stuff, But basically, if you want to look at your bike, and you can stop me if you have any questions about this, is for a new person, I would concentrate on something with a little wider tire for stability. And for safety purposes, I'd make sure that the tires are filled to their proper pressure, and that they clean their gears and chain frequently to keep it in working order. Also, the bike ought to have some sort of flasher in the back or flasher in the front, just so that you can be seen. And basically, that's elemental for bike safety.
And you got a Trek bike. Explain to us, so the tires are very nice too.
Well, yeah, you want to put, like your car, you want to put good tires on the bike, and so these are not bulletproof, but these will take a pounding, and like I say, the right pressure in these tires will make them last longer. As far as personal safety goes, it's indeed, you do not get on any bike for any time without a helmet. The smallest little fall from just a couple feet and you hit your head the wrong way and you're in deep trouble. And then of course glasses for UV and sun protection are also imperative, and I also recommend sunscreen. People rarely think about that. They just out the door. And then of course I always bring water with me. Mm-hmm. And then I'm very vigilant when I ride, so that and that's about it.
You mentioned the helmet. Where can you get a helmet? And talk about that helmet. That's very nice.
Well, you can get a helmet at most any place that sells bicycles. Mm-hmm. If you want a really good helmet, you go to your bicycle shops. Mm-hmm. And they'll fit you, and they'll make sure that you get something really good, as opposed to something, $20 helmet off the shelf at, I'm not going to mention any names,
right.
But they're better than nothing.
Sure.
And I've taken a few spills, Greg, and I've made a little bit of contact with the ground, and then was grateful thereafter that I did have a helmet on.
We're talking to Nick Vredos. He's also a former pilot as well. And you talk about football players that have helmets for concussions. It's really the same thing for bicyclists.
Exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Not as repeated head butts as football, but honestly, you could do as much damage falling from a bike going 10, 15 miles an hour, just going over as a football player can. Yeah.
You talk about gear and attire. You got biking attire on too.
Well, I usually wear a shirt that's polyester. I happen to be in the Williamsburg area bicycle club, and so I have their shirt. Usually they wear spandex, which is, supports muscles and warms your muscles up and prevents chafing. But for most rides that I go on, I just wear a pair of gym shorts and a polyester shirt that'll wick. Cotton it'll keep the water, and you'll just be sweating and you'll be in a pool of water.
Do you think your time as a pilot gave you the discipline to ride? I mean, obviously a plane's a lot more difficult than a bike, but still gave you discipline, correct?
Well, I think I had discipline to begin with. So I became a pilot, which bolstered my discipline and attentiveness. And I think that has spilled over. You're correct. I think that has spilled over not only into cycling, but other things that I happen to do. Very disciplined. And so, and that's also required if you're going to cycle for a long periods of time. For example, getting up a hill. I can't tell you how many times I've talked myself out of going up a hill until I said, you know what, this is not you. And so then I said, go up the hill. And that was the difference. It was the discipline.
Yeah, a lot of people ride their mountain bikes. A lot of people ride the old 10 speeds or the regular type bikes. Kids ride different bikes. What do you recommend for a beginner as far as a bike?
For a beginner, I would recommend either a mountain bike or actually preferably this kind of bike. It's called a hybrid, and it's got a little wider tire than you'll find on a road bike. I have a road bike home that has, they're almost like blades. It's a ½ inch, so your contact with the ground's only about a ½ inch. And that provides for speed and lightness. However, this provides more stability. I've took this bike to the Erie Canal, and my friend and I rode from Buffalo to Albany on the Erie Canal, which was packed pebbles most of the way. And this bike was able to do that. You wouldn't be able to do that on a road bike. And a mountain bike is fun. You don't need necessarily to take it on rough trails. You can ride it out around the neighborhood, but thick tires, it'll give you more stability. And
I prefer riding on flat surfaces, but sometimes people that ride in trails will ride with a lot of roots around, and roots are very difficult.
Right, and I don't do that. Mountain bike, you need a mountain bike. I'd be flat on the ground with this over some of the roots that you'll see on a trail.
Right,
and that's the stability I was talking about.
Now, our producer was talking about bikes during the pandemic are hard to find. Why is that, Nick?
Well, they're not hard to find. They're impossible to find.
Okay.
If you order a bike today, you might get delivery September, October. Okay, and one of the reasons is people are home and they feel they need to get out, and the bicycle provides an easy way to get out and around. And then, of course, they couple that with the exercise that they're going to get, and all of a sudden the light went on, and they decided, biking is very good, and so they run to the stores, and they've emptied out the stores, and they've even emptied out some of the very low-end bicycles. They're very impossible to find.
But how often do you ride your bike?
I try to ride a couple, 2-3 times a week, but I try to also mix up my exercises by cross-training with some weights and some other aerobic stuff that I might do. If I were going to go away on a trip, which I do every year, I'd be riding every day before that trip. But we canceled our trip to Tennessee this year. We were going to go out and ride the Natchez Trace, my crew and I, and so I'm not getting on the bike to train for that. So, but I got seat miles. 2-3 times a week is adequate.
And it just shows you folks, no matter what your age is, and we'll just say Nick is a senior citizen, that with the right mind, body, and attitude, and exercise and diet, it really does help you riding a bike.
Well, yeah, it does. And my diet is that I eat everything I can get my hands on.
But you burn a lot of calories too,
I
right?
burn a lot of calories, but for the older generation, bicycle riding is probably ideal. The only thing you have to be careful of is having your wheels below you. If you haven't ridden in a long time or a new rider, you really need to work the bike a little bit to see what it'll do. Otherwise, a fall is probably the worst thing that can happen to you from a bicycle.
Yeah, unless you're on the sand or something. But,
yeah.
You know, how about the inner tubes and the tires and the chains?
Well, I don't have it here. I have it in my backpack, but I carry 2 inner tubes with me. In case I break down somewhere away from home, I've got to be able to do this myself. And so a new guy can get some instructions from the guys at the bike shops, go in there, use them. They're great people, and understand that it's not like I'm going to jump on this and go out and come back all the time. Sometimes you might have and so I have a pump here. I carry a pump here, pump up the tires if I have to do that.
How about your seat?
I'm sorry?
How about your seat?
Well, the seat came with the bike, and I have found that I've always liked the seats that come with the bike.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've bought others, and then I go back to the one that just came with the bike. Maybe it's just a matter of getting used to it. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because sometimes it's not the exercise that gets you tired, it's the chafing.
Yeah.
So you say, you know what, I could feel like I could do more, but I don't think that I'm chafing too much. I need to get off the bike.
And when you're laboring too much, is that a sign that the tires are going bad? When you're really trying to...
Laboring too much? No, that's a sign that you're going bad.
Okay.
The engine is always there,
right.
You know.
And Nick's a lot older than I am, folks. But anyway, Nick, thank you so much for enlightening us about bike and bike safety. And you're an inspiration to young and old. Well,
I appreciate the opportunity to come here and tell something that I'm passionate about. And I hope this passion just flows to other people, because it's a great sport.
And biking's for all ages.
All ages.
Very good.
All
right. Nick Vredos right there. Definitely a biking enthusiast based in Williamsburg. He's been living on the Peninsula for several decades. And boy, he loves to ride his bike. And it shows by his enthusiasm. Our September edition of Sports Highlights will roll on after these messages right here at Newport News Park.
Fusion Fitness with Alexis. Tune in weekdays 6:30 a.m., Mondays 7:30 a.m., 2:30 p.m., and 7:30 p.m.
Music and fine arts provide enriching experiences. They teach students that there can be more than one solution to a problem, more than one right answer, that mistakes are learning experiences, and present an opportunity to be creative and flexible. The arts encourage persistence and dedication. They require sustained concentration, personal reflection involving critical analysis, and self-adjustment to reach desired goals. These are essential 21st century skills. Skills recognized as important to productive career and citizen success. Each student deserves and benefits from an arts-rich education.
And welcome to our September edition of Sports Highlights right here on NNPS TV. Greg Pickaberis, glad you're with us. Hope you enjoyed our first segment with Nick Vredos. We're here on the road at Todd Stadium, normally the site of football games, but of course we're doing Sports Highlights on the road as we've been doing since April. Here with Beverly McLean from the Peninsula Bicycling Association. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Bike riding is something that's a big part of your life.
Absolutely. I've been riding since I was in high school.
What type of bike have you got there?
This is a road bike. It's a Specialized Ruby, and it's got all the bells and whistles that I need.
Including a nice light that I can see right during the daylight.
I do use lights. I think that's really important to make sure the traffic and pedestrians can see you both front and rear. And the higher the lumen, the brighter they are, of course. And they can be expensive, but you can get inexpensive ones also. And flashing really gets your attention.
It really does. Before we talk about some of the trails, let's talk about bike safety. It's so important. Schools back, colleges in town, cars are always in a rush. Bike safety can never be taken for granted.
Absolutely not. It is so important for the rider and for the driver. and pedestrians too. We find a lot of times when I ride on the road mostly, pedestrians don't always look when they step out into the road. It is amazing, but a bicycle coming through at 20 miles an hour can hurt you just as bad as a car coming through.
Yeah.
So you really, as a pedestrian, you need to watch for the bikes. Bikes need to watch for the pedestrians. When you're riding, you always want to pass on the left and call out your alert to the pedestrian and say on your left so that they are aware. You shouldn't ride with earphones in, or if you do, only one earphone, so you can hear the things going on around you. I always wear road ID. This says my emergency contact, any allergies, blood type, things like that, so it's easy to, in case of an accident, that you can...
Our prior guest said the same thing, no music, because there's a lot of distracted car drivers. The last thing you want is a distracted bike driver as well, and really you have to have your 2 eyes in the front, 2 eyes in the back.
Absolutely. I do use a mirror, a rear view mirror, so I can hear and see cars coming from behind me. Those are all important things.
How about braking? That seems to sometimes be taken for granted because there's always sharp turns. You mentioned cars, you mentioned kids. Sometimes on a Saturday or Sunday it can get really busy out there.
It can, and we tend to ride, I like to ride early in the morning because you have less traffic and less people out. Braking, you just have to be aware. Of course, this is back brake and this is front brake. So you don't want to pull on your front brake only, because then it's going to stop your front wheel and you're going to go right over the handlebars if you only use your front brake. So that's not a good technique at all.
Right.
So,
Talking to Beverly McLean here on Sports Highlights, our September issue. For more, log on to nnpstv.com, at Greg Bick on Twitter. And you talk about back in the day, you used to see 10 speeds, some like the old paperboy bikes, the big wheels, the mountain bikes. Bikes have really evolved. We talked about your bike earlier, but all bikes have evolved, even kids' bikes too.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things is that didn't happen when my kids were young, are these little strider bikes. They don't have pedals at all. They just learn to kind of walk on the bike as they're straddling it, and they're little bitty things, only like 12 inches tall, but a child can learn how to balance that way, and then they don't even need training wheels when they learn with that. They just get on a bike and ride with the pedals. It's amazing.
And we've been in a social distancing era since March. Biking is the perfect sport for it.
It truly is, and it's something you can do individually. You can do pairs and small groups. Our bike club does traditionally have standing rides, group rides. Right now they're on hold, but indefinitely, but you'll find groups of 10 and less are still good for social distancing.
And Beverly, you can bike in all seasons, all 4 seasons.
Absolutely. I ride year round.
Winter and ice are a little bit tough though, aren't they?
Well, ice is a no-no. You don't want to get involved in that. But cold, I can ride down to, down to about 40 degrees. Less than that, you really have to dress appropriately, and you have to really want to ride, because you can get frostbite.
Right, because the lighter the clothing, the easier it is to ride your bike. So the heavier the clothing, I guess it's more difficult to ride your bike.
Well, all the sports and performance fabrics really make a difference. It wicks away sweat and moisture in the hot, and it keeps your heat in the cold. So there are all kinds of performance fabrics that really make a difference today.
All right, let's talk about some places where people can ride their bikes. I mean, we're right here at Todd Stadium. Of course, this is a private facility as far as the public is concerned, but you talk about something like these lanes here, but as far as the roads, you talk about different trails. I know Newport News Park, but again, you have to ride your bike on a terrain that's comfortable for the bike rider.
Right, and there's different types of riding. Like I said, I ride road mostly, but gravel riding is getting a real big surgence right now. And there's some really great gravel trails up in Newport News Park. Mountain bike riding, there is some mountain bike trails over by Riverside Hospital, back around the creek, the water there. For road riding, I ride a lot up and down the James River between here and Todd Stadium down to about Fort Fun. Those are good roads that are not heavily trafficked, and they are signed for bike riding. Share the road signs and all that. I ride in Smithfield a lot. Those are really great roads. And we can't forget the Virginia Capitol Trail up in Williamsburg.
Oh, yeah.
That goes from Williamsburg, Jamestown actually, all the way to Richmond. And that's just a fabulous multi-use path for bikes, walkers, strollers, whatever, completely off-road. So no vehicular traffic at all.
And I read a lot of stuff online too. It's easier for somebody to get out of their house, get some walking clothes on, and just walk in the neighborhood. That's easy, but it's not always easy for bike riders as far as access and trails.
Well, that's true. You have to, I'm fortunate that I live right where I can ride right out of home. But, you know, if I'm going to Smithfield, I put the bike on the car, drive there, and ride from there. I can't cross the James River Bridge on a bike. That's
Right.
a no-no.
We'll talk about your Peninsula Bicycling Association. What is the main theme?
The PBA is it's a social club that's all about riding bicycles. And we have probably about 400 members. People ride all kinds of bikes, from road bikes, gravel bikes, mountain bikes. Electric bikes are really popular and becoming more so. It's a great way to get into biking if you don't feel that you're ready to climb a mountain. There are recumbents, there are fast riders and slow riders. There are riders you can ride a bike at any age, at any speed. There's nobody can't ride a bike.
You mentioned your light in the front of the bike, but there's
Yes.
always the outliers that like to ride their bike late at night, and that sometimes can be dangerous. Talk about the danger of night bike riding.
Well, you definitely want to be in a place that is very low traffic. You need bright lights. We use lights even during the daytime because I think that's really important. I'm not a night rider. There are some people that like to ride at night. There's some people that commute. And so certainly during winter time, it gets dark by the time you're off work. And so when you're commuting, it's a kind of a need rather than a choice. So you just have to use your lights, be careful, be cognizant of the traffic around you.
And you talk about like empty parking lots, you know, where kids can learn how to bike with their training wheels. That's a good place to learn how to bike ride for a young person, because that's a sport for a lifetime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's something I've enjoyed for more years than I'm going to admit.
Yeah, well, just a few years, right? Well, it also clears up your mind and your body and your spirit. It's good, great for mental health in addition to physical health too.
Absolutely. 100%.
Talk about as far as you mentioned bike equipment too. When you said what you bring with your bike, you also have certain types of shoes, I noticed too as well.
I do. I have clipless pedals. They're called clipless, although they have clips on the bottom of the shoes, if you can see that. And there are different kinds of these, but that gives you more leverage because you're both pushing and pulling as you go around, and you just angle your foot to pop out of it and snap back in, and so that does give you more leverage. Let's see, other equipment.
Well, you mentioned the, how about the bike seat itself?
The saddle is very specialized to the person. Sometimes you have to try a few till you get it right. You can have a bike fit from people that do that, that are specialized and do that, to take your measurements, and you can tweak so many things on a bicycle to make it just the perfect fit. And that makes you ride more comfortably and makes you ride faster if you're looking for speed.
Right.
We also use a computer that tells us how far you've gone, average speed, pedal strokes, just all kinds of information.
How do you know that bike is right for you? Do you have to test ride like you do a car normally?
Sure, sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
So you've ridden a lot of different bikes over the years. This is one of your favorites?
I have, and you know, this one's very light. It's made out of carbon. That can be expensive, so I would suggest that maybe for a starter you want to look at an aluminum bike. But as you ride more, you learn what is, you know, there's different positions. As I've gotten older, I used to ride a very low racing bike. And
Sure.
as I've gotten older, sitting up is a little bit more comfortable.
Right.
And you know, there's a shock in here that gives me a little bit of padding. There's all different things that you can get on a bicycle.
Yeah, I'm, you know, a reminder of a kickstand, but you guys don't have a kickstand on this bike.
Not on a road bike, you don't
No.
have a kickstand because that's just extra weight, and,
Right.
and it's not necessary.
Right. As far as what advice would you give to somebody who has never ridden a bike before as an adult? It's not easy, but you got to start somewhere.
To learn how to ride a bike, sure, you just have to try. Just you know, you just have to get on and find the right balance. And once you do, it is just a fabulous sport. It's just something you can do alone, in pairs. If I have something weighing on my mind, it's really nice to just go and ride and think it out. It's fun to do with groups. There's a lot of after camaraderie after a ride with a group of people. So it's just something that's just a fabulous
And
sport.
I think 2020 has been the year for something on our mind this year.
It has.
So ever a time to get to learn how to ride a bike, this is the year to do it. Beverly, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, Beverly McLean right there on our September edition of Sports Highlights, talking about her wonderful bike, about bike safety, about bike protocol, about riding the bike in the morning or at night, and also about keeping an eye on cars and the great trails and biking places to bike on the peninsula as well. Hope you enjoyed Nick Vredos, our first segment as well. So for Ray Price, Beverly McLean, Nick Vredos, I'm Greg Bicaveras. Thanks for watching our September show, and we'll talk to you soon.